Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So, Daniel Smith is still in hot water, still getting slack from both sides of the Separatist and Stay with Canada group in Alberta, which is basically 67% of Albertans who want to stay with Canada. She's even getting called out by Canadian premiers. Doug Ford's calling her out and saying this is ridiculous that he would never call a referendum like this because it only basically hurts the province, Alberta, and rest of Canada, which he's 100% right. Like he's wrong, made rash decisions, impulsive decisions, but on this, I support him and he's right 100%. Even Wab Kinew, premier of Manitoba, called her out on her statement of why they don't need to consult with the Indigenous community, that they only need to consult with them when it comes to resources. She doesn't understand. She does, but she's placating to her base. But he called her out in public in front of everybody and said, no, you're wrong. And she didn't like that. She was upset. But what I want to talk about is how people are calling her a separatist premier. She's not a separatist premier, and she never has been a separatist premier. What she has been is a sheep herder. She herded sheep. The sheep I'm talking about are the UCP separatist group. She herded you guys to use you as a bargaining chip, to negotiate with Mark Carney to get the deal that she wanted, which she got with the pipeline, the hurdle, and everything else. Now she's got to negotiate with the Indigenous groups in BC and the BC Premier themselves. But she herded you guys. She tricked you guys, manipulated you guys to think that she was on your team when she never was. And I'm going to get to why she was never on your team. She used you. And deep down inside, you know that. That's why you're pissed. That's why you want to challenge her leadership. You want to take over the party. You may want to start a separate party. And she knows this. She's created a beast out of you guys. She emboldened you. She gave you a platform to speak. Now she can't control you guys. So she's trying to cover her tracks, backpedal, and everything else, and say that she's for Canada, which is really upsets you guys. But it's also because she placated you. She used you guys, herded you, sheep herded you guys into a direction for her benefit, which is also going to hurt her province in terms of investments. But let me get to why she was never a separatist premier, because she knew exactly what she was doing and she knew the consequences of what she was doing, even coming out of her own mouth. Premier lays out consequences of leaving. She said she didn't think many in the movement understood the costs of setting up a new country, including creating armed forces and controlling borders. And I don't know how many folks who go and regularly visit family in Saskatchewan and British Columbia would want to show passports to have to stop at border stations, she said. These are partial talking points that everybody were screaming from the rooftop, talking about any analyst, any professional, anybody who knew the situation of what it took to separate, let alone start your own country. Currency, what currency would you use? You're landlocked. She didn't even talk about landlocked. How is she going to get the oil from Alberta if they were able to take it with them? How they were going to get it to markets? How Canada would not be able to negotiate with them. Not only are they not negotiating with the individual provinces, they would have to only negotiate with the federal government, and the federal government would say kick rocks. And then you would have the US, who says they would help you, would take advantage of you because you have no other choice. So you would be taken advantage of, no different than any other country that the US is taking advantage of. So now she's coming to the table and stating these facts that everybody else, all the analysts, everybody was telling you separatists that you guys don't understand what it costs. Or maybe you do, but you didn't care and you think you would figure it out once it would happen. She pointed to the United Kingdom's experience after it voted to leave the European Union following a referendum in 2016. These are the very practical things that they discussed in the United Kingdom that none of the promises of windfalls panned out. But a whole bunch of irritations ended up coming up that prevented them from being able to expand trade, travel freely, work freely, and own houses in Spain. Of course, that government, that party lied to the people. No different than technically Danielle Smith, who never stated these facts that she's stating now, but also the leaders of the separatist group, who are also being manipulated by, people in the US. Didn't tell you guys who, like the average voter who wants to vote to separate, all these potential hardships that can come, all the consequences, all the things that will pop up if you guys were able to separate. That would make it difficult. Your land value would go down the toilet. You would have whatever Canadian dollars you would have, that would be it. Because whatever currency Alberta would have would be worth less than the peso for Mexico. She also said that every political party has issues and pointed to the 14 members of Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal caucus who recently wrote a letter expressing concerns about backtracking on environmental safeguards. Smith has been casting blame on past and present political leaders she says are stoking separatist flames in Alberta by demonizing the oil and gas industry. First of all, Danielle Smith has been stoking separatists, okay, and the movement. You know why? She basically says it's all federal government's fault. The equalization payments, when she never really explains how equalization payments work, how it's the federal government and using their money that they collect on taxes. It's not that Alberta's paying extra money just to give it to other provinces. They pay federal taxes to the federal government. The federal government can do what it wants with it because it's their money. And stoking flames, she's the one who reduced the requirements for a constitutional referendum. She's the one who gave the ability for the separatists, the small minority, to be a louder squeaking wheel. She's the one who stoked them, not the federal government. So now she's backtracking. She's saying that her party's fully behind staying with Canada because she's got her deal with Mark Carney for a new pipeline to the west. She doesn't need hardcore separatist UCP members anymore. And she's trying to squish your voice. A voice technically you should have never have. I mean, like, you guys have a right to a voice. You have a right to protest, to make yourself heard. I would never take that away, and I don't think anybody has a right to take that away. However, the rules should never have been changed just to suit your points or your goals. If you wanted a constitutional referendum change, the original requirements of 580,000 votes, 580,000 signatures, 20% of registered voters in Alberta, should have been met within 90 days. Because I always get these fabricated poll numbers that over 50% of Alberta want to separate, that you should have been able to meet that requirement within 90 days, no problem. That the Stay with Canada crowd should have never gotten more signatures than you guys. 400,000 compared to 300,000 you guys got, which is questionable because you had access to a voter registration or voter registry information. So it could have been compromised or forged, those signatures, with the information they had access to. So this idea that you represent the majority of Alberta is false. And she changed the rules to help you guys. Now that she doesn't need you anymore, she wants you to be quiet, because for people to want to invest in a province, there has to be stability. Corporations don't like instability. And this comment of making the oil and gas industry look out to be bad guys, there's a lot of articles out there right now how there's a lot of abandoned wells by these oil companies who just say, we're bankrupt, we're not coming to clean them up. How Danielle Smith and her government reduced the money that they had to put into a fund to clean up these abandoned wells. So now they're backlogged, like years to take to close all these wells correctly that have been abandoned by these oil companies that took the profits and ran with them. And there's articles about oil companies not paying the leases to the farmers while they're pumping oil out of their lands and putting pumps there and everything else. And then, of course, other articles of dangerous gases and chemicals leaching into the land of local farmers, into the air and everything else. And those oil companies are doing nothing about it to address the concerns of those farmers. So yes, oil and gas company industry are bad guys. They don't care about anybody but their profits. And Danielle Smith is there to protect them. So she's in a bind, and she's created a monster that she needs to keep quiet now. And then you got Pierre Poilievre, who's saying, yeah, we're here to support Alberta staying. We're going to canvass all over Alberta, the MPs, to make sure people understand that we need to stay with Canada, be strong, and fix what's broken, because it's all the federal government's faults. Again, Danielle Smith is the one who stoked those flames, not the federal government's. So let's see what happens, because companies are not going to want to invest in Alberta, especially if, even though they're going to win this referendum, the Stay with Canada, what's going to happen, and Danielle Smith is really trying to quash that voice, is it's going to probably cause a party, a new formation of a new party, a separatist party in Alberta. And companies don't like that. They don't like the uncertainty. Ask Quebec. Ask them what happened during or after their 1995 referendum. How companies left Quebec. How the Bank of Montreal moved their head office from Montreal to Toronto after that referendum. That's insane. Bank of Montreal moved from Montreal to Toronto after that referendum, even though the referendum wanted them to stay. They didn't like the uncertainty, because at the end of the day, they don't care about politics. They care about the bottom line. And they're going to move to areas that are more stable. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC, Ontario. Of course, Ontario will accept everybody. More beneficial to us in our economy. So Danielle Smith's in trouble, and she's trying to fix it. There's a good chance she will no longer be party leader, because those hardcore separatists will potentially infiltrate that party. And there's probably a lot of UCP MLAs that support the separatists because they've been infiltrated. And she may have a hard time remaining party leader, especially they feel that she backstabbed them on this. Time will tell, and I'm kind of here for it. Her party deserves everything that they get from this fiasco they created. And I feel bad for the Alberta people that didn't want to have anything, 67% of them that didn't want to have anything to do with this. That the status quo was fine. They wanted her to fight for them, to represent them at the federal government level. And she screwed that up for her party and for her voters and for the province of Alberta. Well, let's see what happens, what damage will happen after the referendum, and hopefully she'll be able to minimize it, which I don't think she will. I think this will be the end of the UCP. I think they're going to separate, or they're going to branch off to another separatist party. And it's going to be interesting, the politics that's going to happen in Alberta going forwards. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think she's still going to be the leader of the UCP? Is UCP going to win the next election? Are companies going to start to bail after this referendum, especially if the separatists start to form their own party? Anyways, guys, take care. We'll talk later.